Hello again. I'm at the same square that I showed in the video about the actress, and this time I came from that road instead of there. So that one, which is much quieter but not so interesting. There are no shops or anything around. So this time I'm going to Andrew's Ascent, Andriivsky uzviz, which is interesting, artistic area. People sell their wares there, and also where there's a church at the top, and there's something interesting that you may not have seen, covering of a building, so I'll show that. And at the same time I will tell you a bit about the book Influence, Science and Practice by Cialdini. That was the first book psychological book that I really analyzed. And yesterday I had a quick look again to recall whether I'd correctly remembered, to check whether I'd correctly remembered a story about initiation rituals. So, what can I tell you about it? I find it remarkable that this guy doesn't understand people. Well, any psychologist. I've dealt with a lot of them in person, on the phone, YouTube comments, other places. And everywhere they show that they don't understand people. And when I read this book again a little bit, with some sections, it was apparent that he doesn't actually imagine himself in the position of others, but what he does is treat everything like an abstract experiment, like something outside him, something. It could have been about cats, for example. I don't know how they think, so I'm going to do an experiment to see how it works. Whereas you know how they think, humans, because you are one. Well, there are issues, of course, with this, but it is possible to do it. I emulated, for example, once the thinking of an autist, and then I realized that the comment he made was serious and not trolling. That's what people often think with autists, that they're trolling or antisocial, and in a way they are antisocial. It's very, very small difference between antisocial behavior and autistic behavior, but okay, that's for another time. So this guy, for example, so he doesn't understand people, and what also clear is that he's not mentally stable. And that's also very, very common in psychologists. So why is that? What happened in the book, he describes himself in the book. Of course, if you write a book, then you always put something of yourself, your own personality, into the book. Doesn't matter what type of book, because you're describing things from a certain perspective, experiences, culture, but also your own personality. But here it's very, very clear, very obvious what he puts in. And one of those experiences was this. It was about some woman. So he noticed he had been working on manipulation tactics that have been used, and how advertising works and all those kinds of things. And at some point he describes in the book that a woman comes to his house, and I think she wants to sell a subscription to a magazine or something like that. And he gets really annoyed. It's like that autistic guy that I mentioned, who came to my house, who saw my house and said, "Oh, that's not a house," and he started getting really angry. He didn't have himself under control. Same here. he became annoyed with this woman, accusing her of what she did was not okay, blah blah blah. And what he actually did was, he wrote this in the book, is that he tried to remove himself as much as possible from various influences, so from society in fact, because he realized all the influences, how they work, and how easy it is to get influenced. Now I'm going to say this guy is a complete idiot, because if he was smart, he would have known how to counter those influences. This is something, by the way, my mother said when I was very little. She said something and that may have helped me to become immune to... So this is Andriivsky, uzviz. Andriivsky Cerkva. St. Andrew's Church Museum. And that is that advertising doesn't work on me at all, ever. When I buy something, I always do it based on reviews or my own analysis on what I think will work. And then how do you call it? Try to see how reliable those reviews are from all kinds of information from various sources, and then make a decision if it's something worth taking so much time. In food, for example, I remarked to a relative, those adverts for a certain kind of candy, licorice we have in the Netherlands. They must have been on TV for 10 years, and I've never bought any of that brand. And it's not that I notice advertisements and say, oh, I'm not going to buy them. No, it's just that it doesn't influence me at all, not consciously, not subconsciously. So there's a reason for this, I think. Possibly what my mother did, but also my own personality. And you can make yourself more or less immune. It's always difficult, there are always issues, but more or less immune. So this guy doesn't do that, but he shuts himself away from influences because he's afraid to get influenced. But not only that, he treats that woman badly, which is just ridiculous. Another example is, it's about page 65 or thereabouts. Let me check on this. Where is it? Cialdini. Yeah, I have it here on the tablet, on the phone. Yeah, influence science and practice. I don't know if you can see it properly with this sun. Let's see, but it says the best researched book ever on this topic. Yeah, no. Absolutely not. Everywhere I see instances where he doesn't know what's going on, for example, and I think, oh, that's obvious. And everything else that he tells in the book, that he explains or shows, I know exactly how it works. I didn't need him. I knew everything already. And I haven't studied psychology. What I have done is I analyze people starting from what happened in discussions, for example, with news groups related to programming. And I came across people who are autistic and antisocial, and that's really the start of understanding people. If you need to understand that very well to understand people's motives, behaviors, and see the patterns. Because manipulation is, of course, an antisocial behavior. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to show. So there's a sheet before that building. And the first time I got to Ukraine, I went also to Kiev. And I went to this Andrew's ascent. Andriivsky uzviz. And there were other buildings, I don't think it was this one, but I could check, which had such a sheet before them that shows the building as it will be when finished. Interesting thing is, a woman told me about, or made a remark, she said, yeah, it looks like it is pretty old. Perhaps it's been here all these years. I'm going to check when I get home on my computer with all the pictures. It's walking like in a cartoon. I thought it was a very funny remark, and that's unusual, and because of that funny. Let me check for the section I want to show. It's about initiation rituals. Let me check which page it is. I'll go sit here a bit. So this is it. It's difficult to see, but commitment and consistency. No, this is a bit earlier. I need a bit further back. Let's see. Yeah. Well, I can't find it at the moment. I'll tell you a bit about what's going on. Maybe a little bit longer. I'll just try a bit longer to find the section that I want.
Это путь воина.
Нет, он просто сейчас
Yes, it's about hazing. I'm almost there. Yes, I'm here. So it goes about hazing, initiation rituals, and about the army. And he mentioned, so this is here about page, if you can see it, page 80. And I will tell you what it says, because the screen is also a bit small. Yeah, it goes about explaining something. It's 81. And then I'll go back to page 80. So in 81, although the rigors of basic training are widely approved by military brass, a policy of zero tolerance is said to exist for incidents of aberrantly harsh hazing, like those contained in the two videotapes uncovered by TV news sources in 1997. And he goes on to say, he tells something about counseling, blah blah blah, that people are outraged even in the military. And he says that for groups concerned about fostering a lasting sense of solidarity and distinction, the hardship and demanding initiation activities will not be easily undermined. Yes, that is absolutely correct. But it's different in the sense that they want this. These military people do not care about some small issues or small injuries. If there are no grave injuries, then it's fine. The point of these initiation rituals is one, bonding between these people, groups, which will continue, as I understand it, to work together, serve together in units. But even if not, then these people will get to know themselves and what will happen under stress. And it's the same as with situations such as relationships, friendships, but even more for marriages. You need to see someone in a situation of stress, then you know what he's really like. So these people know what they can rely on, but there's also a bonding ritual, not just with these other soldiers, but also with the military as a whole, and the military wants that. So of course they don't want to remove hazing rituals, and they don't care about some small issues of someone getting a little bit hurt. It's all irrelevant to them. And it's strange that this guy doesn't understand it. And something else that's going on is the following. He says about it, and this is on page 80 here. My own view is that the answer appeared in 1959 in the results of a study little known outside of social psychology. Blah blah blah. Persons who go through a great deal of trouble or pain to attain something tend to value it more highly than persons who attain the same thing with minimum of effort. This is so unbelievably simple and obvious. Why do you need to reference a study for that? Why do you need to... I don't know what that study was about, but if that was the result or an important part of it, then you think, these people produce nothing of value, because this is obvious everywhere. Long ago, when I was engaged in programming, I discussed things in Usenet groups for Linux, Eiffel, programming, other things. And there was an issue, for example, with an expensive programming system. I think it was ADA based. And it could also have been Eiffel or both. And one guy asked, because the programmers asked this to the buyers to not distribute the program, even though they would be allowed because of the GPL license, and they didn't distribute it, so you couldn't find it for free anywhere. So why could you find it for free anywhere, he asked. And I said, well, that's because the buyers paid a high price. They paid a lot for it, and then they think, why should others get it for free? It's very simple. And it's very similar to this situation. Namely, it costs you something, and then it has more value for you. And also the consequences, because the company that made this program said, if you're going to distribute it for free, then we might quit development, because then it's no longer viable. And another example is something I read somewhere or heard somewhere. It was about a third world country where they were giving bicycles away to people, and they gave them away at first and then changed it to make it have a cost, but not very high, but high enough such that it has value for these people, because they considered it valueless. They treated the bicycles badly, because I thought, obviously, if something's wrong with it, or it's broken, or doesn't ride anymore, I'll just get a new one because it's free. But because it's not free, it has value. That means they take more care of the bicycle, do more maintenance, treat it better, everything. This is just an example that you can hear in all kinds of situations. It's obvious. Why do you need some study for it? Why doesn't this guy understand these kinds of issues directly? So I mentioned Jordan Peterson in the previous videos, and he's hailed as some great guy, blah blah blah, anti-woke people. And in that sense, he does an okay job, but he's not a truth seeker. And he's also incompetent. I mean, one thing I noticed a few years ago, there was some video with a title that he was going into some drug rehabilitation program. I thought, wait, what? He's a psychologist, and he needs to go to such a program. Why can't he do it himself? And why would he be addicted to some drugs? Probably a painkiller or something. But why? I've had serious issues, and I just don't take any painkillers because I feel painkillers are problematic in the sense that they hide what's going on. So you could be you could make something worse, for example, by doing too much work. Depends exactly on the situation, but so I don't use them. But they don't work on me well either. Usually when I've had a few times that I had an operation twice because of I was hit by a car. It's okay, but I just didn't take any painkillers afterwards, and it didn't work long either. My system works them away very quickly, so that's a bit problematic for the hospital. In any case, another example, and then I'll finish this video. I saw him in a talk. Talks about a few subjects, and at one point he asked a question about why do women work together, like feminists or something, work together with women who are of the Islamic faith against the patriarchy, against men, instead of against the Islamic faith, as that is much more of a problem. And he said, yeah, he couldn't understand it. It took me 3 seconds to realize the reason. And it's not just that, it gave me the realization of a very important concept that you need to use to understand everything in life, to analyze it, to make it explicit for other people, because you don't need to use explicit explanation for everything, but everything becomes more clear if you want to explain it to other people. He obviously doesn't understand this. And I mean, he's a psychologist. He's been teaching this stuff for years. He's been working in practice as well. And he doesn't understand it. Why? Try to think of it yourself. Why would women, feminists, Western, work together with Islamic women against the patriarchy instead of against the Islamic faith and the problems that religion has for women? So, why is that?